Today's episode's brought to you by Michael!
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. How you doing today?
Doing great, doing great. We are ever so quickly approaching the beginning of our favorite time of year. That's, of course, Overwatch League. We've kept them close to the chest. We have not been talking about it, though many in the community have. We are finally talking about our power rankings. For the beginning.
We're putting them out there. We're opening ourselves up to the criticism of what is it, Daddy Scrimbucks over there, Jane?
Papa Scrimbucks.
Taking some issues.
No, it's old Uncle Scrimbucks.
Old Uncle Scrimbucks. Yeah, it was. So there's a bit of funny stuff going on in the community there. Jane kind of had like a reaction to some power rankings and stuff, and said, "I just smile. It's going to be an exciting season" or something like that. And I gotta say, got real like for no reason got like crap for it. Like I don't understand why he got any crap for it. But to me, he kind of volunteered for it once he deleted the tweet. Never delete tweets, guys. Double down. Always be belligerently wrong. It's way better than backing down. Just be belligerently wrong. It's just a far superior way to go.
Duck McScrimbucks. Scrooge McScrimbucks. I love it. Yeah, well, what I saw was someone posted an episode or was talking about power rankings. Jane says, I love seeing these power rankings and thinking back to the scrims that just happened and smiling or something like that. And then Monty replies, I love seeing people talking about using scrimbucks and remembering back to the preseason when everyone was talking about scrimbucks and spending scrimbucks, and I just smiled. It's like, yeah. And here's the thing. It's even funnier because he's with the Dallas Fuel, which was like one of the biggest like preseason last year, a top 3 or at the very lowest top 5 team on everyone's power rankings. And
listen,
yikers!
All that told me is there's no team better at defying the power rankings. They just don't care what the power rankings are. They're going to do differently. So that's why we should just put them right in the middle.
So it was the long con of them being really bad last season, so they'd be really good this season.
I don't know. Judging off their roster additions, it doesn't seem like they're conning anybody. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll get more into that in a little.
Yes, we sure will, and we'll go over a little bit of housekeeping like we always do at the beginning of the show. Blackwatch Report, of course, keeping it up, keeping it going, keeping it strong. Tier 2 contenders, open division, Tier 3, all that stuff, anything that's Overwatch and competitive related that's not specifically the Overwatch League, it's on the Blackwatch Report. Make sure to check them out. They've got all their own feeds and all that good stuff. Make sure to follow them for sure. Kyle Wynn and Thornrain are great people. Foul Play, the magnificent and triumphant return of Foul Play, the Fantasy Overwatch League show happened last week, and if you're tuning in live tonight, you will be able to see episode 2 as we will be recording it tonight live right after this show.
Rankings, player rankings. You need them for your draft. Show up.
You need them. Show up. Talking about all of the awesome stuff happening in the highnoon.gg new system, formerly High Noon Pick'em, or maybe they still are High Noon Pick'em. I don't know how it all works, all that good
Both
stuff.
Both URLs work.
Okay.
Sir.
That's the one to use. We'll be talking more about that and all of your fantasy Overwatch League needs coming up. But we've got the triumphant return this week specifically of one of my favorite segments.
Overwatch Today, meme of the week.
That is the meme of the week. We made a conscientious effort for 2019 to be like, you know what? We're not forcing the meme of the week, but if it comes, it comes. And let me tell you, this week it came. We have this meme really needs no additional description. It is a basically shot-for-shot recreation of The Office, the sitcom with Michael Scott, Dwight, all those great characters. But the LA Valiant shot it on their own, with their own crew, made their own shots, had their own characters. It was a really great recreation, except for maybe the last 3 seconds. But had to do it. It was a great video. Make sure you check it out. But yeah, so for memes, if you guys have a meme that you think is great, put it in the memes channel. We always check it, but it's got to be top quality here. We're not throwing a meme in just for the sake of the meme, okay?
No more I need healing memes from Blevins every week just because they make them laugh is what we're getting.
It needs to feel like a disservice to not include it for us to include it. And that's what it would have felt like today. We also could have talked about the ever increasing Monte Cristo as an anime villain meme that's just going around, but that's more of like a macro meme. It's not any one specific meme of the week.
It's been that way since before we started our show, since before Overwatch was announced.
True.
But yeah, it's just always that. I mean, that's Monty. It's what you love it's what you love and hate about him. Mm-hmm. It's Monte Cristo.
Exactly. Guys, remember we're coming in on the last few weeks before the Power Rankings contest is over. There's still time. Head over to the High Noon Podcast Discord and join the Power Rankings contest text channel. Put your Power Rankings in there. Up to the start of Game 1, Day 1 on February 14th. You can put them in there. It seems like every episode we get a couple more people putting them in because they hear the episode. So make sure you do that. You still got time, but I'm putting it out here now because I'm sure it's gonna get asked. We're making no exceptions after the fact. You're not getting in after the fact. So
I did have to DQ an entry last year. I don't like doing it, but there's just no way around it. It wasn't a malicious thing.
I like doing it.
They didn't. They didn't even my problem was they didn't even I don't believe made any effort to change a team that had played or anything like that, but it was they did it it was in the second game of the stage.
Yeah. And
they changed to one other team, but we can't know that. And we have admins that are helping us with these. Shout outs to Raycor, and I think TMP and Thorn are helping as well.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know if they're adminning and point totaling or just helped develop the new scoring system for it. But either way, shout outs to those guys. Thanks for the help with that. But yeah, we're trying not to just make it a ton of work on them. So please get your submissions in before the game starts. Don't try to.
All I'm saying is that I have no remorse for that. So you have been warned. Let's talk a little bit briefly here about what we've done in the last week. Death, anything fun, exciting, new, anything?
No, not really. No, I've just been continuing to play a lot of Sea of Thieves. I'm still on a bit of a playing Overwatch break, but we're how many days? We're 2 weeks away from the start of the season. Mm-hmm. I'm very excited to watch it. So that's gonna run out very soon because there's just no way I watch it and not be super amped to play it. And it's starting to look like the meta's moving more away from goats every single day to me. It's not going fast, don't get me wrong, but so that'll kind of open things up, be a lot more fun. And so I don't know. I'm just getting ready for the league. Basically, I'm on a mini Overwatch break because I know I'm just going to be 100% all in again for however many minutes once we start.
True. And also you've been planting Lloyd rockets and shooting slingshots at me all the time.
You're not wrong. And yeah, so it got so to the point where he had to ask me to stop. So
I mean, I didn't ask you to stop specifically. I asked you if you wanted to work on your Ganondorf. Hey, you know what? I want to learn some other matchups too, okay?
Tough. I need to learn the whole game.
Specifically ones that don't involve Lloyd rockets and little dogs shooting party poppers at me. But yeah, it's been Smash Bros. O'clock for me. I played in another tournament, notably a much softer.
Duck Hunt.
I did. A Duck Hunt player who was much better than me, significantly better than me, and I fared much better than I thought I was going to. But I did much better in that tournament than I did in the last one, though notably this tournament was much softer than the previous one. But top 8'd, I'll take it all day, every day. I'll take a top 8. But been a lot of fun. But let's move on here to news. Couple of little pieces of news here. Man, it was a slow news week, which I'm kind of okay with because we are going to be bombarded with the normal season stuff coming up. You know there's going to be some sort of either controversy or suspension or someone's going to do something dumb or there's just going to be so much to talk about once the season starts. It's going to be great. So I'm fine with this kind of being the calm before the storm. I'm very fine with that. But we did get a new patch, which we are not going to talk about this week because next week is going to be devoted entirely to what's the meta going to be like. How does this affect certain players? How does this affect certain teams? Are there going to be certain teams that do better, worse, or benefit from this, struggle because of it? Are we going to maybe be able to crack the code on who NYXL might be playing at their DPS spots? Probably not. But all of that's going to be talked about next week as we
also bold predictions. We did them last year. We'll give you guys some bold predictions. We'll put on our conspiracy theorist hats, or I don't know what you call it, but we'll get a little crazy.
I call mine my regular hat, but
try to come up with some things that maybe aren't super likely to happen, but that we could very much so see happening
and take massive credit for when they do.
We did last season. So.
We sure did. The only real news this week was a couple of sponsorships here. For the Shock, they are partnering with Sennheiser Gaming, and Fusion is partnering or sponsored by Linode.com. Nothing really groundbreaking about either of these sponsorships. Obviously, we want to see more... We want to see more brands come into the Overwatch League, come into esports. Linode.com specifically is a business-to-business platform, which really kind of it's web hosting for developers, so more of a business-to-business rather than business-to-consumer brand. So that's really kind of, to me, from the business side, really kind of opens my mind of like, okay, this isn't just like a play to get the eyes of children that might be watching the stream, Cheez-Its or
Sour Patch
Kids. I kept thinking Gummy Breakers, and that's not even a thing. Gummy Breakers aren't a thing.
I'm mad at you right now.
I don't eat candy.
You know how much I love Sour Patch Kids.
How much I died when I ate that whole bag that one time. It was so good, and it was definitely the pound of Taco Bell that I also ate that really dealt me in.
Yeah, it had just about nothing to do with the candy, but that's fine.
Yeah, it had absolutely nothing to do with the candy. But those are all business to consumer brands, right? Which makes sense. Like, oh, there's going to be people there are people watching this stream that might want to buy a T-Mobile plan, that might want to buy Sour Patch Kids, that might want to buy Cheez-Its, that might want to drive Toyota. I don't know. I don't even feel bad messing up the sponsors because they're not our sponsors. We don't need to care.
Pretty sure you got it.
Well, now I'm upset. Honda, no. Chevy. That's who it was. It was definitely Chevy. I'm messing it up on purpose now. It was. Never mind. I'm done with this bit. But all of those make like level 1 sense. Okay, there's going to be people who could possibly buy these products watching, and it's like, okay, direct consumer, business to business stuff. It's like, okay, there's people, especially, there's going to be web developers or people who are maybe executives that are going to be buying this software potentially or buying this service that are watching. But it's like, it's not as like cut and dry as like, oh, T-Mobile plan, maybe there's a deal with T-Mobile, or maybe, Sour Patch or Cheez-Its on the box, they've got Mercy on the box or something. It's like, that's a like level 1, like Doi, of course, do this. Seeing kind of that like next level of sponsorship and business partnership is very interesting to me, because it's like those companies, like it's certainly not as easy of a sell to a business to business company to be like, oh, hey, put your logo and put your name and put your money behind this Overwatch League thing, because we've got these demographics watching. It's like maybe there's something more behind that. So very interesting there. Hopefully we'll see some more sponsorships and whatnot announced coming up. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode.
Oh, let's break it down.
We're going to be talking about the power rankings, and I don't know how long this episode's going to be. This one might be the shortest one ever, but again, calm before the storm, people.
And we've said that countless times. So let's not count our chickens before we get to 40 minutes in and we're out of stuff to talk about. So, but yeah, it's power rankings. So as you guys know, we've done this in the past. We do power rankings, I think, a little bit differently than a lot of people do. We even do it differently than our contest runs. When we talk about power rankings, it means a little something different. What we're saying when we're talking about these power rankings is for week 1, game 1. Who am I most afraid to play against? Who would I, if I'm picking my order, of who I'm not playing, go down the line. So number 1 is, in our opinion, at the moment, the best team, the hardest team to beat. Okay, it's not who we think is going to finish number 1 overall.
In my case, it is.
It is in this case. But it's not the case down the line, 1 through 20, right? We're not predicting standings like you would for our power rankings contest. It is a different game there, right? You're playing a game there. There has to be a scoring system. That's how we decided to do it. This is a little different. This is more your traditional NFL power rankings conversation that you have. Who am I afraid of in this moment, right? So, in football, let's say a team's undefeated, but last week their quarterback got hurt, and now Joe Schmo's playing. You're not scared of him at all anymore. They're going to drop way down to like 25 or something. Even though they have the number 1 record in the league. So again, this is not predicting records. This is not anything other than I would be the most afraid to play number 1 on this list. So just keep that in mind while we go through these. We will also probably both be submitting power rankings to the power rankings contest. So if you're curious of what our predicted standings are, you can check that out on the Discord, discord.me/High Noon Podcast, although that might not work. So we got to figure that out.
There will be a link in the description of this video.
And I think there's a link on our Twitter as well that was refreshed. We had an issue with, if you've been using Discord, you probably remember the wave of spam bots that hit just about every server that existed. We had to do something. It was getting out of hand.
Yes.
But yes, all right. So, Blevin, we didn't really talk about how we want to present these. There's a good chunk of them. 1 through 3 is the same on each of them, so we might as well start there.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll discuss differences and go down the list that way. So you want to start at number 1? I mean, it's fitting that you would do that one.
To the surprise of exactly no one, NYXL, number 1, obviously. A, it's me. I was going to put him number 1 regardless. B, everyone's putting him number 1. They are number 1. Duh.
Yeah, it's the regular season. Why would they? They're just taking the bite. You can't choke when you haven't even gotten the food into your mouth yet. So New York Excelsior should be off to a strong start here this season. Especially
since we have talked about I don't know if it's fears or like concerns, we'll say, of like who are they going to play at DPS and when. At this point, I don't really care which roll the dice and roll out whichever ones you want. As long as they've played the character before, I'm going to put them up against any other DPS line in the entire Overwatch League. Like, I don't care. And they have the core of their team still there. So especially week 1 when we're not sure, we haven't seen them struggle. We have not seen in non-playoff situations. They're not going to be sandbagging at the beginning of the season. We haven't seen any sort of mismanagement. We haven't seen, like, we talked about it before. We'll talk about it during the season as well. Like, don't assume the crazy bad thing or the crazy good thing is going to happen until you see it. We're not picking against NYXL until we've been given a reason to, and we have not been given a reason to yet. So even though they did not perform the way that they expected to in the playoffs, the end of last season, or even necessarily stage 4, all of that's kind of behind them. They've had just as much time to recover, recoup. They have some additions so that even if the same exact problems are happening, they have the ability to completely refresh the lineup, at least in some cases. I don't think, Mono and Meko or Jonak were ever really the problem. It was really kind of more of a team thing, but they have the ability. They've got Flower. They've got Nene. They've got the ability to really put out a strong team regardless of which 6 they put out. So I think to the surprise of no one, it's going to be NYXL at the number 1.
Yeah, for both of us too. So yeah, that's the same thing. And we even talked a little bit. One thing Blevins didn't mention is the addition by subtraction. We're kind of high on Janice going over to Washington, but we weren't high on him stepping in for a single map, and that's going to kind of clear things up as well. So we might scarily be even talking about maybe a slightly better map differential for this team in the regular season. But it's all going to, like you said, kind of boil down to the DPS situation. It's not a problem until it's a problem. Let's see how they use it. But it makes us a little nervous. But this isn't the spot to really reflect that. We're not getting crazy. We're just putting New York number 1.
If I'm expansion team, or if I'm team number 21 in the Overwatch League, the team I don't want to face against next week is NYXL. That's for sure. I'll take anyone else over them.
Yeah.
Number 2. Who do you got, Death?
Number 2. I clicked on the wrong notes. I'm losing my mind. I could have done it without the notes. Why did I even?
You know who it is.
Yeah, it's the London Spitfire. Listen, this is instantly already getting way closer, right? Like, we knew New York was going number 1, but when you're talking about a team that they really got it together in the playoffs and played at their best at the end of the season, that's the last thing we saw of them. That's still fresh in my mind. Those 6 players that were key and crucial to that are still there. So there's no reason to really expect them to drop completely off the face of a cliff. Even when they struggled last year, they were solid. So, they started last season really, really strong. It was when they had to adapt to the meta games and things like that, until they found the right meta, things didn't really click for them again. So theoretically, the reason I'm putting them here is because I think it wasn't, that those metas screwed them. It was maybe that the short preparation time, they weren't quite prepared for it. They let go of their coach early in the season. I still don't really know exactly what their coaching situation is over there. It seems like a non-traditional management structure for, at least compared to a regular sports organization. So it's been kind of difficult for me to really get a feel for how impactful the coaching is for them, things like that. Because if I remember correctly, they didn't replace Bishop last year when they let him go, at least not right away. I think they did in the long term, but so they used people that were on staff. I don't know, but either way, we saw them play at their absolute best. They were the best in the world come the postseason, and for now, at least until we see that decline come back, I've got to leave them here.
Yep, I've got the same here. Everything you said, agree with wholeheartedly. The one thing that, again, I was gonna put NYXL above London regardless, but taking the Homer hat off, the only real difference, it was pretty much, I think if you look at the overall New York, I don't remember the exact record, but I think New York has the best overall record against London. I think head to head that NYXL comes out on top of that in matches, but NYXL has that possibility to on parity. Even if you just took the same teams back to back from last season, I'm picking NYXL over London most of the time. And NYXL does have additions, so you can't predict that the crazy big thing is going to happen, but you can base predictions off of, you said, Janice is not coming in for the random map. We're oh man, if NYXL doesn't lose this one map against London, maybe they turn it around. The whole game, the whole match is changed because NYXL throws a map with Janice on it, and maybe Flower or Nene really adds another wrinkle to NYXL that London's not ready for potentially, and that NYXL has, no one's ready for. So I think NYXL has gone up potentially, or at the very least stayed the same, and London has made, as far as I can remember, no changes in the offseason to their actual roster. So they're staying the same, for better or for worse. Obviously, you don't need to change too much if you're the league champions. But NYXL and London, definitely, in all honesty, I could see you swap those two, but I think there's a good enough argument for NYXL.
I think it's the only team you can even make the argument.
Right, for sure. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But you're still wrong.
What? That means you're wrong.
not you, not wrong.
Whoever's
doing
that.
Whoever's putting London.
Gotcha. All right. Number 3. Who do we have? You are
Sorry,
muted.
had my mic muted there on accident, bumped it. Number 3 is the Philadelphia Fusion. Another team that kind of got better as the season went on, got hot in the playoffs. Does that mean they're going to repeat? No, not so much, but recency bias is a thing. The last time we saw them, they were making their way through the playoffs, just taking down some of the best teams in the league. So you have to kind of think of them up there in that elite territory of the top 3. I don't think I would put them there. In fact, I would not put them there if this was predicting final standings, because we've talked about their swings. But if I'm trying in week 1, I'm going to assume I'm getting somebody's best, right? So if I'm picking a team to play against in week 1, it's not going to be the Philadelphia Fusion. They're you have to assume, like I said, that you're getting their best, and their best is as good as anybody else. It's just how, can they maintain that through the course of the season? Maybe we don't get that in week 1. I don't know. There was not much rhyme or reason to when it happened last season, when they would just fall off for a week or something like that. But, definitely, obviously, EQO, Carpe, just that duo right there is more than enough to just put the fear of God into a lot of people. Just him yelling "winnable" must haunt other teams, as they're going through their scrims, things like that. So, I think they're a really strong team. I have questions for sure, mostly about, like I said, the consistency. Also, who's going to be playing tank for them. I fear they're still going to continue to make what I think is the wrong choice there. But either way, they weren't, much. They were a little worse overall. I don't want to say that, with either one, but they didn't become a bad team with Sato at the helm. So regardless of who's tanking for them, I feel confident they're going to be able to stand toe to toe with most teams in the league most weeks, unless it's an off week, and maybe, who knows, maybe those are even gone by the wayside. So I think it would be silly to try to predict a down week right out of the gates here. All the prep time in the world, every reason to be excited and pumped for the new season. You usually get some pretty solid gameplay in the first couple weeks.
Yeah, here's the other thing about, so I tend to agree with you. I'd rather see Fraggy out there than Sato. The thing about Sato is I don't think we ever saw his maximum potential on that team in the season, because the communication errors were so visible, especially when you look at the grand finals against London, who admittedly exposed that more than any other team that I can remember. There was just clear communication errors where Sato would be diving on a target that shouldn't be dove on, or doing another thing that's just off sync with the rest of the team, and that really ended up costing them in the grand finals. Now they've had a whole off season. They've had scrim time. They've had additional time to work with him, or at least get on a better page than they were potentially, to really work together and be able to actually move and act as a cohesive unit, which, remember, he didn't play for 3/4 of the season. And he wasn't, as far as I know, wasn't able to scrim, wasn't able to practice with them, wasn't able to do a lot of the stuff with the team because of his suspension before the season. So he was really coming in essentially as a brand new player 3/4 of the way into the league, and was given a starting position and thrust into this new position where he has a very high technical skill, but wasn't able to play and work with the team in the same sense that Fraggy and the other tanks were. So I think the more time we get with Sato, the more time Sato gets with the team, the better that he's going to be for that team if they end up going with him. So I think that they potentially level up in the offseason.
It's certainly possible. I can't rule it out. And I think it might be a little bit like the Janice Mano situation, where it's more like a stylistic thing. But to me, when I have DPS the caliber of Carpe, right? Like, I don't care if Fraggy dies.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You're still going to win that fight as long as he blows the tank line apart for the other team, gets them all out of position, exposes a couple DPS players for Carpe on Widowmaker, that sort of a thing. So maybe it's even a meta call with these two, right? Because you're not always going to have Carpe on the Widow. It could be very much so the case that you would want Sato in a Winston situation. I don't know. But just the eye test to me with the two, it wasn't a huge gap between the performances, but just Fraggy brought that little extra to the table. But we all know by now I'm very partial to big plays, and I reward that in my rankings and in my analysis, and when I talk about it. and that comes with the aggressive play style of Fraggy, and it's lacking with Sato. Doesn't mean one's wrong and one's right. It just means I prefer one.
Yeah,
over there.
And here's the thing: Philadelphia Fusion is going to has the ability to know which one's going to work better for them, and they can run whichever one is working better for them, whichever one scrimmed better, whichever one was playing better and worked better with the team. So, regardless, I think both the maximum of either outcome is very good for the Fusion. So I like them at number 3. Moving on to number 4, this is where we start to diverge, and I think what we'll do is we'll use your guide or your rankings as kind of the guide as we're going through, and I'll talk about some of my differences on the side as a side combo, so we're not going through both and talking about the teams twice.
Yeah. So should I give who you put there as well?
You give your 4, and then I'll put where I put them, and I'll talk about who I have it for.
Sure. So for me, I'm going to just kind of lean into the firepower here that's been added to the San Francisco Shock, and I'm going to put them pretty high up on this list. Probably about where I'd put them in a final standings prediction kind of a scenario as well. I really like what they've been able to do with the roster. They're similar to New York in we have so many DPS players, it's impossible to use them all. But unlike New York, they're on a very different tier as far as skill goes, I think, for a couple of the players for San Francisco. So there's probably going to be less temptation to, bring Striker out and bring Baby Bay in or something like that. So I don't think we're going to see as much substituting as, we might be seeing from New York. And I think that's going to bode well for San Francisco. The big question mark here is tank. That's what could really kind of blow this up. And just kind of make it completely wrong and make it go the opposite direction. If I thought Super was going to be the main tank for this team, I'd probably drop him a couple of spots because I was not super impressed last year, despite all the hype he had coming in. He even had some chances to play the Reinhardt, and it didn't have the same impact that I remember from his time previously in professional Overwatch. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I did think his Winston was improved from what we saw back then, but it wasn't really on par. And I don't think it was where you needed to be to stand toe-to-toe with your Fates, your Gestures, your Fissures, your Mumas, those kind of guys. I think those guys outshine them and give a big positional advantage when Super's the tank. But Smurf is in now. He was acquired from the Houston Outlaws off of the Academy team. So I think that's got the potential to be a really good addition. And I think between the two of them, maybe they were able to work with Super and level him up, or maybe, Smurf is an improvement there. But as long as they can get to above average tank play between the two of them, I'm going to leave them here at number 4. And I'm going to just kind of lean into it and put a little bit of faith in that, right? Because just the firepower of the DPS line, the Striker Architect just terrifies me.
Yeah.
I watched Architect dismantle Houston. Like when he pops off, it's over, and I don't care who it is. Like he's one of those guys, kind of same with Pine. He has that kind of similar effect, though he doesn't come in off the bench, so maybe it can happen a little more often. But yeah, just the sheer firepower in the DPS line makes me really, really liking San Francisco's chances here. If we're in more of a, maybe it goes a little south if we're in a firm GOATS meta, and I'm a little bit wrong that we're kind of moving away from it, and we've got room for McCree's and some DPS heroes to make it into the lineups. Maybe they're a little too high, but I'm gonna rank them like it's not a full-on GOATS meta and call them number. Who do you got, though?
Yeah, so I have San Francisco Shock a bit further down. I've got them at number 8. I definitely can see them being higher, closer up to 4. I'm not buying into it yet. I mean, yes, Striker Architect is very scary, very powerful. I'm just like, how much faith do I want to put in just the DPS line? Like you said, the tank line is maybe suspect. We're not sure. The support line is fine, but not great. I mean, I think I put these. I did these power rankings a little more conservative in terms of like giving teams a ton of credit for making swaps from last season, which, I mean, maybe it's inconsistent because given that logic, I should put all of the expansion teams near the bottom, but which I kind of did. But I don't know. I mean, I could definitely see them being higher. I'm being a little more leery about how high I put them. And my number 4 was your number 5, so we might as well kick it off here. Soul Dynasty. Who's better than Fissure? No one.
Gesture.
It's
close.
Who was
It's
on a
super-
better
it's super
team?
close.
Although they were on
Gesture.
the same team. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Who was on a better
Oh,
team?
yeah,
Gesture.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Listen, I'm a little nervous on Soul, and I was a little hesitant to even put him at 5, if I'm being honest with you. But at the end of the day, the things I'm worried about aren't necessarily short-term problems. And like I said, this is who do I not want to play right now. So I put Soul at 5 because while I have worries that Fissure might be a divisive force in the locker room and in the scrim room and practice rooms and meetings, he might not be the best overall personality that you want in the locker room. Like I said, so that worries me some. Also, what are they going to do with support? Jexay's coming in. Toby's still there. Neither of them I'm super confident in. Jexay obviously is a very well thought of prospect, but again, an unknown just coming into the league for his rookie year. And then Toby was a disappointment last year. He was a problem. Yeah. Jaehong didn't perform like we're used to seeing him perform in the past. So does he get that back? We're in a little better position for the guy to play some Ana finally, which will definitely help him. I'm banking on him rebounding to an extent, but how far does he rebound? Does he get back to the best flex support player in the world? I don't have a lot of confidence in that, but I think he can be up there. But we'll have to wait and see exactly how it plays out for them. Either way, similar to why I'm bullish on Houston going into the year when a lot of people are down on them is they had needs, they had weaknesses, and they went out and addressed them. So whether it works out or not, they're putting themselves in a position. They did what they can control and what they can do. Maybe they didn't sign the right player, but they tried people out. They brought them in. These are the ones they thought were the best fit. And so they made the steps needed to address the concerns from last season. And I think they're going to see that, pan out for them, and they're going to be rewarded for that with some extra wins and a better placement. Yeah,
I mean, I guess I am giving Soul a little extra credit considering how they finished last season, but I mean, Fissure's a huge one. I think it's, I don't know, in my mind it was more realistic for Soul to go up this many spots than Shock, but I definitely could see I could see either of them either being better than this or completely flopping. It's entirely possible, but that's the fun of our first draft, essentially, of power rankings, is how we get to see just how wrong we were. For Soul, I think if management and coaching decisions and all of that other stuff that it seemed like every week we're like, why is Soul actively throwing? If the people making those decisions can have learned even a little bit from what happened in season 1, I think season 2 looks a lot better for them, especially considering they made some big upgrades with Fissure. And I mean, you still got Fleta, you still got Munchkin, like you still have good players. Jaehong, again, okay, I'll give you Jaehong is hit or miss potentially, but even if he's not the godlike best support in the world like he once was, he's going to be, and I think to your point about Fissure not being the best player in the locker room for you, Jaehong is that player that the other players look up to. He is the leader. He is the captain of that team. Now, that can either butt heads with Fissure potentially, but I think what's more likely is that the respect is there for Jaehong, and Jaehong can run that team and manage that team at least from the stage, and be able to hone that in instead of having him sub himself out going into playoffs. So I don't know. I've got a little more faith in Soul, but I could definitely see these. I mean, a lot of these picks are kind of like, I could see it going the other way for sure. But let's move on here to your number 6.
Sure. So at number 6, listen, this is where they were permanently stuck all last season. I'm not changing it now. Number 6 is your Los Angeles Valiant here. They lost some things. They definitely did. I mean, they were the number 2 team last year, regular season. So part of you wants to put them right there again, But at the end of the day, they've got some goofiness going on with their flex support situation, right? Like, what is Kareev? Is he going to be the DPS replacement for soon? How is Izayaki going to hold up to that new role here? So now they've got multiple positions changing, and I'm still, they still got their tank line. Their tank line is still going to do a lot of work for them. I still think it's going to prove to be the most important position group in Overwatch League. So yeah, I'm really, thinking they're going to continue to be a strong team. 6 this time around is better than 6 last year, by the way.
True.
That was perfectly average last year. Now it's decidedly in the the playoff race and everything like that. So I still got them as a strong team. I think Custa's a great leader for them, so he can help really bring Izayaki into the team. He's a great communicator there, so they've got that going for him. I worry about the DPS line. That was their weakness last year. Is it going to be their weakness this year?
Right.
Is the support play going to be worse? Is team synergy going to be worse? There's a lot of question marks that came in, but overall, this is still a pretty solid roster. It's not one that overly excites me. I'm not super pumped for the LA Valiant games, right? Like I am, the Excelsior, the Fusion, or seeing the Shock come out. But I still think they can take it to anybody at any given time. If agilities can pop off, if they can get some good hit scan play when they need it, then it could very possibly just continue to be another very strong season for the Los Angeles Valiant. So at least for right now, picking who I wouldn't want to play right away, I'll shy away from the number 2 team.
For sure. I've actually got the Valiant just 1 spot lower than you at number 7, so I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, Fate and Space, very good tank lineup. You can't really go wrong with them. They did lose their arguably star DPS player in Soon, obviously to the Paris Eternal. But so yes, the hole in that roster is definitely DPS, but man, wouldn't it be interesting to see like what if the LA Valiant got Nene or something like mid-season? Like how sick does that team look at that point? And possibly they're waiting to see how the meta shapes up, see what do they actually need? What are they actually going to need for this season for their DPS spot? Who that what lineups are they going to have to cover, and what kind of hero pool do they actually need? Maybe they're waiting. Maybe they're not sandbagging, but they're being more conservative with their roster changes up at the beginning. They've got a lot of young players. They've got really great players. LA Valiant never looked, like you said, super great. They never looked like outstanding. They never looked like, oh man, they're going to dominate this team. I don't think there was ever. We talked a lot about this when we were doing our pick'ems. We're never like, man, the LA Valiant are going to dumpster this team, unless it was like Shanghai or Florida. But even games against Dallas or San Francisco at times, we're like, maybe they could lose. So they never looked great, but they always did perfectly fine. They always ended up in the top half of the rankings, and they ended up doing quite well. Especially they won stage 4. They won the stage 4 title, I believe, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure they did.
Trying to remember if there was a stage 4.
There was. I'm almost positive that they did, because I remember there being a tweet about them being the first U.S. team to win a stage, and New York was like, New York? Like, oh please, you know what we mean. That happened. But yeah, no, they're still perfectly respectable. They're still going to be in the top here. I mean, I think so. At a macro level, I think there's a lot of these 5 through about 12 or 13 spots that are very open in my mind.
It's super close.
Very close.
We could watch one day of games, and I would probably change like 7 or 8 teams around.
That's why we're not letting you submit after the fact.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
So moving on here, we'll go to my number 7. It is my boys, the Houston Outlaws. A lot of people are lower on them. Some people, it's kind of the general ballpark, I think, of where you're at least your people that aren't like going overboard trying to predict their downfall or anything have them. Maybe kind of on the upper side of that. I see them 8 to 10 a lot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm putting them a little higher than that. They still got their tank line, which was a huge asset for them all last year. We know Muma and Cool Matt, or Muma and Spree, and if it's Muma and Spree, maybe they can do more than stand up to any of the best tank lines in the league. Yeah. You know, when he's in there on Zarya, he was a game changer for them. And, you know, Matt, I think, dropped off a little bit throughout the season. We'll see if he can, see if he can kind of get back into form a little bit. But listen, they were a flawed team last year. They had a fatal flaw, and that was their tracer play. They didn't have one. Just didn't. They thought Clockwork was good enough. He proved time and time again not to be. He's no longer on the team. Dante is in. I was screaming to make that trade at the moment it was possible to make trades in the first season. So, I think they did a good job addressing the needs they had. I don't think I think it would have been an overreaction to make many more changes than this. They still do have 2 main supports. That was another spot where I thought maybe they could have made an improvement. But, you know, Banny played really, really well at the World Cup for Team Canada. He did a lot of work there. And I think if it's a Lucio meta, maybe we're seeing Boink and Raucus instead of Bonnie and Raucus. Yeah. And it was really, really, great to see. It would be great to see him get back in there and play again. Sorry, I'm like reading chat. It's tripping me up. No, I didn't erase my whiteboard. It fell off my wall, so I need to put something else back up there at another time. But yeah, so listen, they're a team that was flawed last year. I've seen a lot of people say things like they got worse every single stage. They didn't. It's just not what happened. That's just not what the records were. When you look at it, they were much better in stage 4 than they were in stages 2 or 3. Their record was improved only by a couple of games, but when you only play 10, a couple of games is kind of a big deal. That's 20% better.
Tens of percent.
Yeah, so I think they're in a decent spot here. Do I think they're world beaters all of a sudden? That depends on the meta. You know, I think they've shown that they're a much stronger team when the meta favors some of their favorite heroes, but now they've kind of diversified their DPS hero pool a little bit. Muma can play any of the tanks you need him to. I think he's one of the more well-rounded tanks in the league. They've got both of the off tanks covered. You know, so unless there's a missing piece in the DPS line that I'm not seeing, and I think they've got it covered even without Arhan, and Arhan's a bit of a jack of all trades that can come in and be that Swiss Army knife, I think, for them as well. So I'm pretty high on them, but overall I think they're in for a similar season to last year, but the lows aren't going to be as low, because even if they're not a good dive team, they're not going to be a really bad dive team like they were last year. And so that'll help them. You know, if they win 1 or 2 games in each of those middle 2 stages where they were about 500 or 4 and 6 or something like that, this was a playoff team. So is Dante worth 1 or 2 wins in a dive meta? Yes, I think so. Like especially when you compare it to, you know, Jake and Linkser, who just flat don't play it. I think it's going to be a really, really good, look for them this year. Hopefully, like I said, the support gets a little better. Hopefully we get Cool Matt back on form, and everything should be doing pretty well for Houston. But yeah, it would probably take a meta for them to really push, you know, like we saw stage 1 last year, to push to be number 2 or something like that. I wouldn't predict that, but I think they're a really solid team, and nobody can really sleep on them. They've got teams they just body. London, thanks for not changing. We already know how that goes. You know, there's a lot of things going for them, and the biggest weakness for Houston last year was, if not dive meta, it was map 5. Map 5 going to King of the Hill without a tracer player was brutal. Even in stage 4, when Brig was out and everybody was like, oh, dive should be dead, they didn't stop. Nobody stopped playing tracer. Absolutely nobody. There was just Briggs on the other side crushing them, and they would be maybe forced to swap if they wanted to. But so yeah, I don't know. I think we're getting to a situation where now we don't have to wonder, is Tracer going to be out of this meta? That's not a thing. It's just, we'll just put our Tracer player in. And they actually have one. So that should do a lot for them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at last season with Houston, and you look at like the games where, okay, they really needed a trade, and it always felt like they're playing a gimped game. Like they're playing a game where they clip their own wings. We're like, oh, Linkser is on Tracer. Okay. Jake is on Tracer. Okay. Or, you know, Clockwork is in the game. Well, all right. It's like you're playing at 85%. And
one hand tied behind your back.
Right. And when you are playing against the best teams in the world, that starts to look bad. Now, when you get to play at full full billing against these teams. Maybe, like you said, they turn a couple of those losses from last season into wins. All of a sudden, they're in more stage playoffs. They're making it to the stage playoff finals. Maybe they're making a season playoff run. I think that definitely helps. Now, they're not the highest. I don't think they're the highest ceiling team necessarily, but I do think that they've made a lot of improvements, and they were already they're already a fringe stage playoff type team. They only made improvements. I got to see them. I definitely see them being in the mix for sure. I had them at 9 compared to your 7, so right in the same ballpark.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch nonetheless. I think, anyways.
They're always a fun team to watch. Yeah,
they're people are so opinionated about them. That it just win, lose, or draw, people are having a good time.
The question here is, who are you rooting for in Houston versus Toronto?
Houston.
Oh,
not particularly close.
Don't you have any sort of loyalty to the team?
Not to Canada.
The team that you're closest to. Come on, man. We can see Canada.
Not close to Canada.
I'm very close. I am very close. Also, I was kind of hoping that you were going to ask who I was going to root for in NYXL versus Toronto, and well, that's not close. Though I do love Toronto, but NYXL, I've put too much sweat equity into NYXL to not have them still be my favorite team. But tis another story. Moving on here to your number 8. Who do you have?
I've got the Los Angeles Gladiators. This is another one of the teams I was rooting for last year. Question marks with Fissure leaving. We saw what they were stage 1 and in the playoffs without a top tier main tank. Now they add in Roar and Decay to kind of supplement things. Mm-hmm. Is Roar going to be the equivalent of Fissure? I don't know, probably not. But he's a very highly thought after main tank prospect. I think there's a good chance that they can bring in Decay and kind of get back to rotating their DPS around a little bit like they did earlier on in the season. They had some good effectiveness with that. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun to kind of watch them reinvent themselves a little bit while still staying mostly intact. Mm-hmm. They've still got Shaz and Big Goose, and I think that's going to be a big anchor for them. Obviously, they've still got Bishu. I'm worried about Void in the Void and Bishu dilemma here. That's what really kept them from maybe taking the Valiant spot or something like that. So there's 2 question marks, but it's something we saw them kind of balance last year, and it didn't really blow up in their face. I do think they're a better team, or at least they look like a better team last year with Bishu, but maybe they can integrate the multilingual better without the interpreter in game with the full off season to do it instead of Void. I believe he was a mid-season addition for them last year, so not necessarily the best circumstances for him. So I think there's a chance maybe overall the tank play gets a little bit better from the Gladiators, but maybe not the main tank specifically. Listen, they were an up and down team last year, so right now what sticks in my head every time I think of this is like, I've seen them without Fissure. It's not pretty. But yes, this is better than iRemix as your main tank, but I don't know. How good is it
when he came back in?
No, he didn't, but he didn't play well. Like, he didn't do good either. Like, he was just kind of there and wasn't a huge liability. And when that's all you can really say for it, it's not. It's hard to boost them too high up or predict them to be a team that's massively on the rise. But certainly, I talked a lot about range of outcomes the last couple of weeks. Certainly a very good finish is in the range of outcomes here. All these teams that are in basically 10 to 12 could surprise and move up.
Yeah, this is a hard one for me. I have them at number 5, actually. Thinking more about it, I could definitely see them dropping down. I guess I'm eating my own words here and revealing that I have almost no consistency in having made these power rankings, which I guess is the most likely the most likely outcome for a power rankings that I've created. But if you think about it from they're replacing Fissure with Roar, and if you can give an assumption that they're on a similar level, you can equate them back to where they were, which is pretty good. And then the addition of Decay, is, I think, a plus for them, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
And LA Gladiators has shown, I think, better than most teams, with the exception of potentially NYXL, to have kind of a finesse of that, swapping it in and out 3 DPS players and being able to do that effectively. So it's not really, it's more like, yes, they lost Fissure, and yes, they're gaining 2 different players, but it's almost like plug and play parts, right? Like they can really kind of do a similar thing with new players, and it's really just going to be, okay, are these players going to perform better than before? Is one of the most sought after, or allegedly most sought after prospects from the offseason better than Asher? We're led to think that that's the case. So let's see, how high they actually peak. I guess I was less conservative with them. I was a little safer when ranking them in terms of them going up in value, but I could, again, I guess it kind of goes without saying now, but I could definitely see them falling down a lot. But we shall see. Now, who are you rooting for in LA Gladiators versus Toronto?
I'm gonna lean Toronto on that one.
Okay.
I'm gonna let the Gladiators fall to number 3. Okay. I do want to have that. I want to have a connection to the localist team, but it's not going to overwrite the confluence of like every favorite player I had before Overwatch League joining under the same banner. Like that was too much. We're not overwriting that, and now they've added Mooma to the list of some of my all-time favorite players. So it's too much. No Canadian team was going to overtake that, but
I hear you. I like it. Okay, so we have your number 8. Let's go to your number 9, and we are finally going to see an expansion team.
Snap! Yeah, we're gonna work one of them in here, and obviously it's going to be the Vancouver Titans. They're very light on the people that can help them. I think it's just Hureg, or not? Is it Hureg? Yeah, that's like ever been in the league before. So I'm a little iffy on that front. It could be a slow start. I would pick them to actually finish a little higher than this if I was predicting final standings, because I think they'll improve over time more than most of the other expansion teams. Mm-hmm. But again, this is for week 1. They've clearly got firepower. They've got team synergy. All that stuff is going to carry over for them. Mm-hmm. But that's also low-key a problem, Blevins. There's tape. There's tape. They know.
Tape.
You can review them in a way that you can't the Guangzhou Charge and things like that. So it's not all sunshine and daisies for Runaway fans that wanted to see this happen. I don't think there's going to be stumbling blocks. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to leave them here for now. This is a team we've not seen on this stage, and the number of times I know it's crazy, guys, that you could like step on the big stage with the bright lights and you might blink. But like it happens to literally the best people, the best athletes in the world will make it to the pros, to make it to the big time, and they blink. They're just a shadow of what they were. Mm-hmm. Am I predicting that for this team? No, but I also have no idea where number 1 in Korean contenders stacks up to in the Overwatch League. And anybody that thinks they know is fooling themselves and lying. And maybe you're right, Vancouver fans. Maybe you're just right. They could certainly be number 1 in the standings at the end of the season. It's possible. They have enough talent there. But how are you going to predict that? If you're predicting that, you're just I don't know. It's a fool's errand to predict them in the top 3 to 4.
Old Scrooge McScrimbuck knows how good Vancouver is, but no one else. None of us plebs that aren't seeing those scrim. No one else that isn't watching the scrims knows just how good they are. I actually have them a little bit higher. I've got them at number 6, but a lot of the same, and notably River Hippo in chat posted earlier before the episode. He's got them actually at number 3. A madman. But I think, if we look at the Vancouver, there's a couple ways you could look at Vancouver Titans. They come in, they're already formed, they're already a formed team. They've been playing together for a while. They have a lot of high level, but not the highest level, high level tournament wins. They have a big fan base. And you know what I could say, what other teams I could say that about? Lunatic High, Envious. Both of those teams flopped at the beginning of the season. So I'm just saying, like, all of those things are true, and all of those things on paper, very good. We saw those not matter even a little bit at the beginning of season 1. However, going back to one of my other points, like, I'm not going to predict that that's going to happen just because of all of these good things being the case and it not having worked out last season. I still have
power
faith
rankings aren't meant to be done in a vacuum before the season and left
Right.
alone. Power rankings are meant to be a living, breathing document that changes with every game and every week. And when you have a team entering the league like this with an expansion, it's almost unprecedented to put them at middle of the pack.
Yes.
To be perfectly honest with you, that would never happen in a traditional sport. They also wouldn't get to sign a full roster. They would be pulling pieces and bits and parts from other rosters around the league. So it's a different conversation. I don't want to harp on the how it works in traditional sports too much, but we have no idea what being a champion in contenders means compared to what it means to stack up against the champions in the Overwatch League. I would guess it's not super favorable.
We know what it meant for Zachary after he won contenders for Fusion University and then went and played in the World Cup, and it did not fare well for him.
No. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see, and I think you're seeing kind of me and Blevins both hedge our bets a little bit here. Neither of us wants to tank them and put them down low, but neither of us really wants to crown them as an elite team or anything like that either. This is very much just like I said, hedging my bets. I'm being non-committal here. It's kind of like your Cowards 3-0, but just in power ranking form. I'm just let's put them here as like a playoff team, but like not a great playoff team.
I mean, so
this would be a wild card.
I will admit that inherently the expansion teams are definitely going to have to, for week 1, or we're talking about right now week 0 essentially. They're going to need, like, it's actually, I think, bodes very well for them that they're this high on both of our rankings, because they really, like, we are very much the, like, show us what you got. Show us first. Paper doesn't matter. So Vancouver is getting a lot of credit here, especially with my number 6. But the power rankings are meant to be, like you said, a living document. They're not to be interpreted what the original writers of the power rankings meant back when they wrote them, instead interpreted to modern times. So the Antonin Scalia's of Overwatch League power rankings should sit down. Okay, anyone who got that reference, 10 Blevins bucks for you. Blevins,
real fast, how are we doing on our short episode today?
We are we just crossed an hour, so
all right. So we're gonna pick up the pace here a little bit as we go down the line. A little less explanation, a little more quick hit reasons, and we'll kind of run through the rest of the list.
Well, there's going to be less for me to talk about for a lot of these. So
moving on, though, we'll go to number 10. I'm gonna put the Shanghai Dragons here. Feels weird, 0-40 to
real
dead
weird.
Smack dab, but they made so many changes. It's hard not to look at them as a completely new team. I like that they address their coaching staff concerns almost as much as they address some of their roster concerns. So I'm very unsure about them, right? They've got a little bit of that, early on. We've got 3 people. We've got, organizational people that have been here before, can really help advise these players on how to behave, and not really behave, but like, how to prepare, how to live during the middle of the season, right? Because you really do need to, it's got to be a completely different lifestyle in order to perform at your best in that situation. So they've got some people that can help with that in a way that the other expansion teams don't, even though they're not an expansion team. That's the way I'm going to word it every time, because they're pretty much an expansion team. But they're an expansion team plus a little bit. And that plus is what's going to put them here at 10 above some of the other expansion teams I'm big.
I can't, in good faith, put the Shanghai Dragons at the middle of the pack. I made that mistake last year. A lot of people made that mistake. Yes, they made a lot of changes. Yes, they're almost a completely different team, but there's something I just can't do it. I've got them at 14. They stand to go up a lot more than that for sure, but again, show me first. Like, I'm not super confident necessarily. I mean, I think even more so than, even though they took a big chunk of a different Korean contenders team, which I'm blanking on the name. O2 Ardeon is Toronto Defiance mostly. I'm forgetting what team they took most of their players from, but they're more analogous to like the Lunatic High or the Envious of season for season 1. They're more like that than even the Vancouver Titans are. So I'm less high on them, even though, yes, I agree they are kind of like an expansion team plus. I'm just not. I'm gonna need some. I'm gonna need some time to recover here before I put a Shanghai Dragons above the top of the half of the pack.
Yeah, and to reiterate, like the entire middle of the pack, it's so close between these teams. Like it's really power rankings. If you sit down and try them, and you're just gonna get to the point where there's like 6 teams where you could easily put some. So you could move these up or down 1, 2, even at this point 3 or 4 spots, and I don't even think
even more
the overall,
potentially.
Yeah, I don't even think the overall rankings
volatile.
change very much.
Yeah,
this is the part where the gap is minuscule. So
yes.
Moving on,
number 11.
Number 11. I have the Hangzhou Spark. This is just a team that I don't know if I'm buying into the hype a little bit, but it's at this point in the rankings, I'm now just like, there's a lot of teams that I don't like and I don't think are going to be super competitive. And now I just need to put the teams that I'm like meh on in here and find some way to rank them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm putting Hangzhou Spark here. I think they've got some really strong pieces. I think there's a good chance they can level up over time, but early on it's going to be very tough for them to really go too crazy and to take the league by storm. So obviously Gushui at main tank is going to be a big deal for them. They've got some good damage players. Godsby is a world-class DPS player, at least from contenders. We'll see how that translates. They've got a lot of really strong players coming in. So I like their chances here. But again, if I'm remembering right, this is a team that was kind of cobbled together. This isn't like a pre-existing energy. So I think the slow start is definitely on the horizon for them. And curiously, they're only a couple spots away from Shanghai here, who I'm similarly iffy about. And that is or 1 spot, right? They're right next to each other, and they play in the week 1 game, day 1. So
yeah,
going to be really interesting to see. They could easily flip on its head right away with the end of the first day. Hangzhou is going to sit here for now. I like what they've got. I just need to see it come to fruition before I can think of them as a top half.
I mean, if I think about it from as an organization, what team do I not want to play week 1? Honestly, Shanghai Dragons is probably pretty high up there because I don't want to, as an organization, be the first loss to them. So maybe they should go up higher.
Maybe they should be number 1.
Yeah, maybe they should. But no, I feel a lot of the same way about Hangzhou. Like, to us, having not watched a ton of other contenders regions, not the most knowledgeable on this roster. I do, however, have them above Shanghai, and I'm picking them to win over Shanghai in week 1. Just for the lulz, if nothing else. Like I just don't want to see them win, just because everyone wants to.
No, we need to root for Shanghai, Blevin, so it can't happen to us. Nobody wants to be the team to lose to them first.
I'm very confident.
We need to root for Shanghai. You say that, but there are some close games against some teams that New York's much better than.
Actually, we probably do play in stage 1.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm just rooting for Shanghai whenever they're playing a non-Gladiators, Defiant, or Houston team. Like, just give me a win before we hit any of those opponents, and I'm happy.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I've got nothing more to say about them. Moving on to your number 12, who do you got?
I got the Guangzhou Charge here. This is, like I said, I'm not confident in any of these teams anymore, but I like some of the pieces that the Charge have here, and I like kind of how they've built this team out a little bit. I think having Hotba is going to be very convenient for them. He's shown to be a very good player. We have Eileen on this team. I said his name.
I know.
Get it together.
I was looking at the
season starting. Blevis.
Okay, we got it. I was looking at the schedule to see if NYXL actually doesn't play against Shanghai, which it's looking like they might not.
Got to get it together anytime. We got Nene and we got Eileen. We need automatic drops for.
Well, I already had the whip for Nene when you said it, so.
All right, well, that's good. So yeah, I like some of these pieces here that the Guangzhou Charge have, and I think it's going to help them out maybe a little more than some of the other teams, some of the other expansions, but it's going to be a slow process for them. There's a lot of unknown pieces. How are they going to integrate their non-Korean speaking players? Probably not so much at all at the beginning, but maybe they do over time. Maybe that levels them up. I don't really know. But there's a lot of hype players here. Some names I know from World Cup and things like that make me like them a little more than some of the other teams. But yeah, I will put them at, what was that, number 12?
Yeah. Also, by the way, I just checked. NYXL does not play against Shanghai Dragons at stage 1, so I'm very confident it's not going to be us.
So lucky. I'm still just glad that Dia wasn't enough. Like literally, Dia in full God mode form was not enough to beat Houston last year.
Yeah.
I was like pre-crying about it. Like, oh my God, I was so terrified. But yeah, anyways, moving on, we'll go to number 13.
Number 13.
A caveat here, I know we're talking about, week 1, who am I afraid to play against? Toronto would be at 20, okay, if I was counting Neko being suspended for 3 games. So I'm not counting that because that's not a fun experiment.
See, I did count it, and this is where I had
Good Lord. So this is me saying I think Neko's there in these games. This is how I would rank them if he was playing. It's going to be rough for the first couple games for Toronto. No doubt about it. But if they were at full speed, I think they'd be a relatively strong team. And I'm leaning a little bit on the word of the NYXL players that said, this was a team that was being slept on a little bit. They're better than people think. I can see that happening. This is a bit of a Junkenstein's monster. They're combining, 2 rosters together. This is O2 and some other players. I can't remember where from off the top of my head. But yeah, they're a team that's got a lot of parts that might work. I don't see huge things from them in the first season, but there's definitely some talent here that can surprise people. And I'd certainly rather play against some of these teams below them on my list.
Yeah, no, I have them at 12 right now. I'm pretty. I mean, again, Homer hat is very clearly affixed to my head for the Defiant. I've got them pretty high. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them, but I've got them a little lower here at 12 for me, which is still higher than what you have them at normally. But I'm factoring in like it's gonna be rough the first few games, but I do think people are sleeping on them, and that Neko's a great player, but does he make the whole team? I sure hope not.
All right, moving on. I'm going to go with my number 14 team here. That is going to be the Atlanta Reign. Let's go, dudes. It's time to get the season underway. We've got to see DeFran in action here.
Yes.
Listen, I'm not big on this team. I really want to watch them play because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think they're just going to be a very fun team to watch. But we did get to see, we got that little peek into some of their scrims, and they weren't quite as, they were a little bit more together. I don't know. They played like a team. It was NYXL. They lost. But it's also scrims, and scrim bucks don't matter too much. So I'm not looking at results when I watch scrims. I'm just watching general. I'm just keeping an eye on general audio people. Blevins is doing the
Scrooge McScrim bucks. Yes, my gold coin monocle, which makes no sense whatsoever.
That's why I'm laughing. But so I'm questioning their DPS core. I like their tank line as much as I can like kind of unknown prospects coming in. I think Dako and Pakpo are pretty solid prospects. Not everybody can have pre-existing Overwatch League main tanks, right? So you can't just punish people for it forever. Thought Erster looked pretty good on the Briggs, so I think they might be okay if they need him on that role, which I wasn't really sure how they were going to fill that.
Or one of
he looked pretty strong. I'm terrified of their flex support, though. Kodak is a huge question mark to me. Sorry if that made a loud noise. So yeah, I don't know that he can really hang with some of the best flex supports in the league. And I think if they have, might be a team like Houston last year where there's just a fatal flaw staring you in the face, and there's just nothing the team can do about it. So, I'm going to leave him here kind of on the outside looking in for the time being. But I saw enough in the scrim to make me think like I probably would have had a more like 16, 17, 18 maybe before I got to see some of that scrim footage. But yeah, I thought they worked pretty well as a team. So I'm gonna put them here at 14 for now, a couple spots.
Yeah, I am switching this up because I realize this needs to be the case. I've got them at 15. So I've got them even lower than you. So take that, Atlanta fans. Although I drafted DeFran on my first run fantasy team, so I got him at a cool last pick.
You did.
Moving on for your number 15, we can finally start talking about many of our fans' teams.
a very popular team in the Dallas Fuel. I'm going to give them a little bit of improvement here. I think it would be pretty tough to be as bad as they were last year, especially with the expansion teams coming in, the slow starts we talked about. This isn't something that they should particularly have to deal with. And at the start of the season, they've got effect. We can feel pretty confident that he'll still be there. They haven't lost 3 times in a row, so he doesn't need a vacation yet. So yeah, I think he's going to be there. They're going to be pretty strong at the moment. At least on their DPS line. I don't know what they're going to do at off tank. It's definitely a concern for me. OGE I think looks pretty good, but he looks pretty good in like ranked, and then when he's like 3 stacking with other OWL players, and does that mean he can't look good on stage? No, because he did look good at times in stage 4. We did see some of that, but how did the coaching staff that they brought in that were supposed to be super hyped about, like, how did Arrow do in the World Cup? That to me is a big question mark that wasn't addressed. I don't think their DPS core is adequate here, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. It looks a lot better with Effect in the lineup. I think they can make it work if he's there. But I'm not right now confident in who that number 2 guy is going to be. It looks like it's probably going to be Zachary. Judging off World Cup, that's a yikers. He showed that he can step on the big stage in the bright lights and blink. Like I said earlier, there's going to be players that do that. Maybe it's out of his system. Maybe he comes in and plays okay now. I don't know. But I still have a very hard time, even if he doesn't blink again, thinking of him as somebody that's going to be a huge impact player for this team. We know AKM's not going to be that, judging off of last season. Maybe something's different about the meta. Checking in, nope, still no Soldier 76 play. So why is he here? And then Taimu is
Ash.
Maybe, but I want Taimu on that role because I think he's the one that has shown that ability with those hit scan heroes that aren't, as tracking based as Soldier, that kind of one shot hit scan, the sniper style characters. I think that's Taimu territory. And so I want to see Taimu and Effect start for this team. If I was confident that would happen, maybe I'd bump them up a spot or 2. Closer is going to be big for them. I like their support line quite a bit between Closer and Unco. I think that's going to be strong for them. So if RCK can surprise me, I think we could see a similarly surprising season like the Valiant had last season, maybe like a budget Valiant season, not get to 2, but maybe be in the running, even though their DPS is a little lackluster. But Valiant did that off the strength of lockdown, absolutely airtight tank play, and that's not something I see here, so I can't predict it until I see those tanks really level up, or I see that, hey, I'm wrong about Zachary. He does have it. That was an anomaly. It was team environment, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. So there's a lot of question marks for Dallas. I don't think they made near big enough signings to really make me flip them around on their head and think of them as a winning team, but definitely an improvement. We're going to see them be a lot more competitive, even in losses and stuff now than they were kind of middle of the way last season when they were just a train wreck. And honestly, it was brutal. Like, if you were a Dallas fan, I talked to plenty of you guys. It was brutal to watch. I don't think you're going to have that problem this year. But I don't think that's going to make you a winning playoff team necessarily.
Right. They've got a lot of the same physical talent there, but they're not going to have the, for better or for worse, mostly it was for worse, I think, if you look at it overall. XQC being there, played fine on stage, but the off-stage stuff, the drama around it, certainly didn't help. Effect, it seems, from an outsider's perspective, has kind of honed in some of the mental health issues he was having last season. Obviously, when he was playing, was one of the better players, arguably their best player, at least their highest peaking player, one of the best players in Overwatch League, and was one of the most fun to watch. So if you get rid of some of those other issues, actually hone in and take what Dallas Fuel could have had on paper and actually execute that from the beginning, they're actually a pretty scary team. They're a team that I have rated pretty low at 13, so a little bit higher than you, but they could go way up. For sure. Like, they have the option, they have the ability to, rather. So
because all the doubts that last season gave us get erased really fast, and we remember how ridiculous Taimu can be if he just shows it to us. That's all. Just show me you've got that second DPS spot locked down, and I'll be
show me what you got.
Yeah, I'll be a lot more comfortable with Dallas as playoff contender.
Yes. All right, number 16, Death, who you got?
Number 16, I'm going to go with the Washington Justice. This is the team I pretended to be in the mock expansion draft. and I'm clearly not showing them too much favoritism here as a result of that. But listen, I just don't see this as a tier of talent conversation for me with Washington. There's positions I like. Like I said before, I'm willing to buy into Janus was just not a good fit to come in for one map. I'm willing to buy that he has the potential to be there. I think between Guido and Fazix, whoever wins out that role, I think is going to perform pretty well. So I think flex support will be well tended. I like Ado quite a bit. He showed us last season he's got a lot of pop-off potential, and he can do it even on a very bad team. I don't know much about Sansam. I don't know much about Stratus or Corey or Hyanu. So I don't know a lot about a lot of these players, and that makes me very nervous. So this is a team that I think there's weaknesses that you can exploit. I think there's players that, like, with all of the question marks, not all of them are going to work out, right? Like, there's too many unknowns here. When you've got one unknown like the Gladiators do, you just go like 50-50, right? Like if they hit, then they're fine. But here I'm like, well, if they hit on this 50-50, how'd the other 50-50 go?
Right.
And then there's a third one, and it just adds layers to things that can go wrong for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not a deep team. They didn't go out and sign themselves 12 players. They have the league minimum 8. So for better or worse, we're going to find out soon. You know, maybe one or two of these players pans out and they are contenders. But I don't see anything like, you know, top-end elite team success in Washington's future this year.
Well,
some good pieces, but
when I see them, I do think they are contenders. But I mean Overwatch contenders, like where they should be. I've got them rated at number 19. I had to. I'm just not big on it.
You left a joke on the table last week. You can't do it this time.
Nope. You miss 100% of the jokes you don't make. That actually made a little bit of sense.
I don't know. I tuned out.
It definitely did. But yeah, no, I'm not sold on them. What you're saying about the 50-50s, I agree. And also, if they hit all of their 50-50s, how good are they? I don't know. And I don't think they don't look like they have the high end that even some of these teams that I'm like, well, they're kind of unknown, but also that means that they could be much high. It seems like they have a much higher end. I just don't see it for Washington. Again, they could be better. I don't think they're going to be above middle of the pack, but I'm willing to be wrong. I just don't. I just don't see it.
The more teams that make our power rankings look stupid, the more fun and entertaining the season is. So
more
by all
hilarious
means,
it's going to be.
I hope I'm completely wrong, except for I hope I'm wrong on everybody, even Houston, and they're number 1.
I hope I'm completely wrong, or I'm exactly right.
Right.
Like I want this to be the exact. Like,
the exact list, or just like the inverse of it, and it's just comical.
I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I want the inverse of 2 through 20, and number
2 through
1
20.
would be the same. Yeah.
I can get that.
I'd be very happy with that, actually.
Moving on, though, I'm going to go to number 17, and I'm going to go with the Boston Uprising, and I might be a little too low on them. They were a team that last season we were very, very low on, right? How did that do us?
True.
You look at the roster, and you don't see necessarily the lights out DPS play that you need, and I said that last year too.
True.
Did they? I'm going to put a little bit of faith in Huck's ability. Like I said last year, if we're wrong and this team's a playoff team, we just all need to accept that Huck's a genius and move on and like just operate under that assumption from here on out.
Yeah.
So that's still in the possible cards here for the Boston Uprising. What makes me terrified is the team environment conversations that were going on around this team. There's a lot of players that were here last year that were a part of that, and whether or not they were personally really upset about the living conditions or whatever, we're not going too into detail about that because it was all speculation and we just don't know. But there's going to be players around that still aren't happy, and if you have players in your locker room that don't want to be there, it's really difficult to win under those circumstances. So I'm going to keep them down here for now, but I'm not putting them. I've seen some people because of that. And not even wrongly so. I don't think it's like crazy to put them 19-20 territory. I got to give Huck some credit, right? Like he proved me wrong in such a profound way last year that I can turn my hate blinders off for a minute and go, okay, the guy might have been able to sign something that, sign adequate players just because I'm not confident in them. Like he tried them out. He scrimmed them. So maybe. So I can't put him at the absolute bottom. I've got him pretty far down.
Yeah. 2 things. I I feel like if the players were unhappy and they wanted to leave, like they had a pretty good out of like, hey, the rest of the team's leaving. Like, just get up. People are literally tweeting or writing tweet longers or whatever about the experience they had. It's not like, oh well, it was a secret and I'm gonna look like a snitch for saying this. Like, nope, everyone was saying that, so you can like they had an out essentially to be like, you know what, I'm done with this team. I'm done. So I think the players that are there for whatever reason want to be there, at least in some capacity. The other thing is like, just because one player or even a couple players didn't like the conditions of how the team was ran or whatever, doesn't mean it's bad or unsuccessful.
I generally agree with you, but I have a really hard time with players that are like putting their PCs on cardboard boxes.
Okay, that's messed up.
Still like living and going to work and playing against the Philadelphia Fusion, who live in a mansion with Chef Heidi preparing their meals for them. Like, so maybe it's not like, oh, this is so miserable, I can't live like this. But maybe it's just like the grass is greener. Like maybe they're just sitting there like looking at the other team houses
with
on
the
their
pools
YouTube videos and going,
yeah.
oh, it's next year, you know. And if that's what they're doing, that's going to be really hard to focus on this season. So that's why I've got
for sure. Yeah, and I'm not even talking about the like outside of team stuff or the outside of game stuff. I'm just talking about like the coaching style and not the coaching management style. Just might not like if I took my high school basketball coach who was very intense and very disciplined, and I wouldn't have him coach every player for every Overwatch League team. I wouldn't have him run every management team that I've worked like, because that type of discipline and intensity is not for everyone, but it is very good for some people and can really inspire people to do great things in a lot of cases. So I don't necessarily think that because of the experience and the management of that was allegedly had by Huck, I don't think that's necessarily bad or negative. Now, if they have cardboard boxes versus mansions, that seems more like a Crafts not spending their money on player housing than Huck. But again, we're not going to go too deep into that. But I've got Boston at 17 as well, actually. Coincidentally, we both have them the same low spot. Moving on, your number 18. Who you got?
My number 18 is going to be the Paris Eternal. This is the team that region locked themselves for seemingly no reason, and this is the only punishment that I can exact on them for doing something that I found to be kind of foolish. This is another one where it's a little bit just tier, you know, like player skill tier, and the way I see it. They went and got Soon as a DPS, and it's very possibly their best player, and that's not good enough for me. You know, as good as he was, he was part of the number 2 team in the league last year. It's not that he can't play Overwatch at a high level and be on a good Overwatch League team, but there was fate and space to really be the stars for that team. And now I look at this roster, and it's Soon and Shadowburn that have to be the stars for this team, and I'm not sure they're really up to that. LH Cloudy and Ben Best at main tank, 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. I don't know, you know, even who's got an edge there. We've talked about maybe it being Ben Best just because he's French and they went way out of their way to sign French players and things. I do like Shadowburn a lot. I think he's a strong player. I love Cruz in the main support spot for this team. I'm not sure on Hip versus Gray. I hope it's Hip so that I can say Hip up Anonymous a lot. Like, I think that would be fun. But other than that, that's all I really got on this team. I mean, Finzy's a solid off tank. But yeah, this is just a tier situation to me. They handicap themselves by refusing to sign players outside of the European region. And as a result, I think they're going to get a little punished for it. But I'm open to be proven wrong. We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I would love to see Cruz be successful in Overwatch League. I'm a little sad that he went to a team that I think is maybe doomed for a rough start, but hopefully they can prove me wrong. There's definitely solid pieces here. They've got some of that veteran mentorship from pre-existing players here that they can lean on, so maybe they don't start super slow. But I look at this roster and I just think I can beat it, you know, with any of the teams we mentioned above.
Yeah, I would, in the same vein as the Washington Justice, say that they're a contender for sure. I almost feel like I would rather have the current Gigante list than this roster, but maybe not. I've got them at 16 simply because I want to see Shadowburn live up to his triumphant self. I think he has the capacity to be a top DPS. He didn't get his style was not working with Philly. I think it's possible that he was part of the reason, or his style of play was part of the reason that bad Philly would come out, that good versus bad Philly would come out, where he would pop off and they'd be amazing, or he would shut down and not be great. Hopefully a very consistent DPS player like Soon can complement him more than Carpe. I don't know. I would not bet on that. I'm not banking on that even a little bit. But I think they have some capacity. They have some chance. I don't see a lot like the Justice. I don't see that top end, that high ceiling that I would want to even see them spike up in the rankings. I think maybe they have. I think I've got them close to the top of what most people would put them at. Mm-hmm. They have the chance, if they pop off, to go up a few spots, but I really don't think that they're going to go up much more than that. I will say
we would be doing a disservice if we didn't mention real fast before you get to your last point, the coaching staff for this team. True. If they succeed, that's why. Mm-hmm. It's because they're getting, kind of similar to what Boston did last year. Yep. They're getting more out of players that didn't look like they were ready for it because of the way they're game planning and they're working. But we've got Damon as the head coach here. We've got Saida as an assistant coach. We've got Kai, and there's a couple others as well, player development coaches. There's a really strong staff here in place for this team to be successful. So if we're right, it's because I don't want to blame the coaches, but I guess we'll have to wait and see the manner of their losses. But so that to me is the biggest strength for this team, is how well coached they're very likely to be. So I'm excited from that perspective that that's how they would overperform if they do. I'm sorry, what was your last point?
Oh, my last point was just that Paris Eternal is my favorite non-Korean speaking European-based team. So that's worth something, right?
Sure, I'm going to swallow my joke because it's inappropriate worded the way I would have to word it for that. But
they're the only one with that.
I know I got that part of it, but I was
don't.
Anyways,
there's going to be something inappropriate.
I'll tell you off the air.
We get it. We'll save it for follow-up.
I've made the joke enough with just the wording was a little friendlier. We don't need to do it every time we talk about them. 19 here for me. We're going to move on is the Florida Mayhem. They're just kind of a train wreck, and I just don't know what they're doing over there. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Every move they make feels reactionary to me. Mm-hmm. Where's the plan? Have a plan. Have a solid, understanding of what you want your team to look like and what you want it to do, what you want the roster to look like. If you wanted to go full Korean players, go full Korean players. Trade Tavik, do something. Like, let them go. You don't even need to necessarily trade somebody, but they're just reacting, and they didn't even try out their old off tank for that they signed mid-season. I'm blanking on his name. Zappis, yeah.
Zappis. Yes.
I love Zappis, and I forgot his name. My apologies. Shame bell me, but
shame.
Give that a second to go. But yeah, so listen, I'm nervous about them. I don't know exactly what we're going to get from them, and I don't think they know what they're going to get from them yet. They just had the coaching change, which is another sign of disarray, and it's just doesn't look good for Florida future. They've got bare hands there to sign a team for them, bring him in before you sign your season 3 roster. As long as he's there and they retain him, hopefully they make better additions next year. There's one thing we know about our boy Bare Hands is the man has a plan. He's a man with a plan.
Yeah,
and it's worked for him in a big way in his first job. So let the man do his thing. Why is he your assistant GM? Fire somebody. Anyways, anything to add there?
The only thing I have to add is that I gave them a little bit of a bump here because of In Bare Hands We Trust. I've got them at 18 instead of 19. So
it's just the biggest high noon bump I've ever seen in my life. Last but not least, here we're going to go with the Chengdu Hunters, the team that just had to go out and sign themselves a main tank, presumably because the one they had was not performing up to snuff. I don't know. The roster looks a bit of a mess to me. It's it's lost. And I know the least about these guys that I do about most of them, right? They don't even have a lot of guys that like I've seen in the World Cup. But it's just, it looks rough, and the way they're signing players late, everything like that, just to me lends itself to this is probably going to be a little bit on the rough side for this team. Don't want to go too in depth. I mean, I think a lot of people rate Chengdu pretty low. So if you're looking for reasons, there's an abundance of them. You guys can check them out. But yeah, this is kind of everything a lot of the criticisms I've had from a lot of the other teams, combine 2 or 3 of them into here, and that's what we're dealing. It's a class of player issue. It's a new player issue. It's a little bit of everything rolled in these guys.
For sure. And that's going to take us to the end here. And what I predicted to be our shortest episode is actually bordering on our longest here. So let's very quickly, Death, read just 1 to 20, recap your rankings for everyone. Nice little bow at the end here, and I'll go through mine.
New York Excelsior, London Spitfire, Philadelphia Fusion, San Francisco Shock, Seoul Dynasty, Los Angeles Valiant, the Houston Outlaws, the Los Angeles Gladiators, the Vancouver Titans, the Shanghai Dragons, the Hangzhou Spark, the Guangzhou Charge, the Toronto Defiant, the Atlanta Reign, the Dallas Fuel, Washington Justice, Boston Uprising, Paris Eternal, Florida Mayhem, and the Chengdu Hunters.
All right. I'm going to go through mine. I'm going to try to read it as fast as possible. New York Excelsior, London Spitfire, Philadelphia Fusion, Seoul Dynasty, LA Gladiators, Vancouver Titans, LA Valiant, San Francisco Shock, Houston Outlaws, Hangzhou Spark, Guangzhou Charge, Toronto Defiant, Dallas Fuel, Shanghai Dragons, Atlanta Reign, Paris Eternal, Boston Uprising, Florida Mayhem, Washington Justice, Chengdu Hunters. Time. I don't know how long that was, but that was pretty quick, and I don't think I really flubbed anywhere. So I'm actually pretty impressed with myself. But that's gonna be it, guys. We're bordering on or pushing an hour 45 here. Thank you everyone for listening. I thought this was gonna be the calm before the storm. Actually, the storm has just begun. Next week is going to be meta discussion and bold claims, hot takes, bold takes, hot spices, spicy takes, whatever you want to call them. That's going to be next week. And the week after that, preview of week 1. So make sure you check it out. Find everything we do over at highnoonpodcast.com. Follow us on all the social media stuff. High Noon Podcast for everything, YouTube, Stitcher, all that, or iTunes, all that good stuff. Make sure you follow us there. Subscribe on iTunes and YouTube if you have not already. Death, any last minute stuff before we head out? Do foul play.
If you're live, stay and check out Foul Play. We'll be starting that up. If you're not live, it's going to be up already at the same time that the main show goes up. So switch right over to that feed and check that out. Get ready for your fantasy leagues. Fantasy opens up on the platform. It is February 4th. So draft season is here. You've got like 8 days to get your drafts in. They've all got to be condensed. So be prepared, be ready. Check out Foul Play. We're doing rankings today.
Yes, make sure you check that out. But guys, that is going to be it for Deathblow. I am the Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
Oh, do you think I made my fortune by spending real dollars? No, nothing but scrim bucks for me.